So a lot of the times, people are often confused between what a startup is versus small businesses. And by people, I mean me too. It's been not that long before I got to know what the difference between these are actually. So now that I know, I'm gonna tell you. So if you're interested, please do watch on and like and subscribe. Please like and subscribe. Hi guys, I'm Anarsi and welcome to Startup Lounge. Here we help entrepreneurs build, fund, and grow their businesses. So if you're interested, please do watch on. With the launch and the exponential growth of companies such as Snapchat or Airbnb, Uber, the word startup has become what it is today. It has completely and very quickly infiltrated the world of business. And if you're from a tech industry or even live in big tech cities such as New York or Silicon Valley, you are very well aware of this word and its usage. But as most of us people, common people, we don't really know the difference between a small business and a startup. So this video is for you. We're going to be discussing what a startup is and how it is different from any small businesses. So let's get into it. Now, what is a startup? Although a lot of people define it in a lot of ways, this is the one that most people refer back to at most times. This is a definition by Steve Blank in 2010. Now, according to Mr. Blank here, a startup is an industry which acquires to get recognized as fast as possible and grow as fast as possible too, but while maintaining a very significant impact or disturbance in the current market. And this is not what small businesses do. So this is what differentiates between a startup and a small business most prominently. But let's discuss 7 more points that's going to help you understand the difference between a small business and a startup more. Point number 1, growth intent. One of the biggest differences between a startup and a small business is the growth intent behind their operations. As I've mentioned before, startup founders are actually looking into significantly disrupting or impacting the current business market with their ideas. And this means that they do not want to continue to keep a small, limited team forever. They're looking to grow and grow fast. And this is why so many startups are founded in the tech industry, because technology has a wider reach and it can be funded fast, and it is also very easily scalable. And in contrast to this, small businesses are actually just for-profit businesses, and they can be of any legal structures. They're independently owned, funded, and operated. And also, they do not have a significant impact and dominant name in their fields. They're not recognized internationally most of the times like startups are. Thus, startups are just clearly made to grow, and small businesses, on the other hand, are just made to sustain and keep a profit. Okay? Point number 2, business objectives. Now, in case of startups, its business objectives and goals are very closely tied to its intent to grow, because all they want to do, like I said before, they want to impact the market, they want to grow as fast as they can and beat out all their competitors all at once. But this is not the case for small businesses, because in case of them, they do not need to break through the market or join a complete new one. All they need to do is simply have an idea and desire to make their own business and reach a market where they know they can be successful in selling their products. So, as long as they're doing that and earning revenue, they can successfully operate their business. Startups are oftentimes only found in the tech world, but small businesses are not the same. They're usually what we consider to be street businesses, such as grocery shops, coffee shops, or auto repair shops, salons, and so much more. Now, even though these businesses are not a breakthrough in this community, they are very important. And this is because they employ about 60 million people in the US alone. So in this point, you can see how the objectives of these 2 different types of businesses define who they are. Startup is not the same as small businesses. Now for point number 3, and that is end goals. Now, when you start a small business, you do plan on working on it and continuing it for quite some time, maybe before you retire. So, before you hand it over to a family member maybe, or sell it off to an interested person, this becomes your whole life. And the only goal that you have is to stay in the business. But this is not the same case for startups. According to Blank, a startup is a temporary organization which is built to search for repeatable and scalable business models. And this startup model might change quite a few times before it stumbles upon the right model. And upon finding the right model, the whole purpose of the organization becomes to execute that model. And at that point, the organization becomes not a startup, but an actual company. But in real life, does this really happen? Yes, it does happen. But what happens even more often is that at that point, a larger company usually buys the startup, which makes it, again, another company or a part of that larger company. So here you can also see how end goals define what a startup is and what a small business is. Point number 4, and that is funding. Now, this point is also a huge distinguisher between a startup and a small business. Now, how do they get their funding? It is equally difficult for both startup or small businesses to find funding in comparison to already established businesses. But in this case, startups do get an edge. They get more lucky and get equity funding. Now, with equity funding or financing, startups can look for angel investors or venture capitalists to offer them a huge amount of capital in exchange for ownership of their company. Therefore, as the startups continue to raise money, they also have to give up their independent ownership. This being said, although equity financing does diversify the ownership of startups, it does also allow its funders to raise a huge amount of capital and continue to be a mentor or a guidance for their startups. In contrast to startups, equity funding does not make sense for small businesses, because think about it, small business owners do not want to give up their ownership for a large amount of capitals. Now, and large amount of capitals do not even come their way because angel investors or venture capitalists do not get interested in small businesses. All they want is a startup that can grow, that has potential, and is gonna provide them more revenue. Point number 5, and that is level of risk. Although there is a huge level of risk involved when you're launching a new company, when in comparison of a startup versus a small business, the startup sadly takes the back door here. They have the disadvantage because, as we have discussed before, a startup moves on the principle of creating a product or services that impacts the market. And this is basically you trying to establish a brand new market for your product. And with the process of trying your product out, raising funds, and even giving it a tryout, you are taking a leap of faith that your product will be successful. But a lot of the times you run the risk of it being a failure too. It might not work out as you planned. On the other hand, small businesses also have risks associated with them, but only about 20% of them fail within their first year. And this is because a small business is penetrating to an already established market. They already have customers beforehand. So it's not as hard for them, and their risks are more manageable and maintainable. So I hope by watching this video, you have now completely eradicated your confusion between a startup and a small business. So next time you're planning on making your own business happen, I hope you know which one you're working on, a small business or a startup. I'm actually kind of tired of saying a startup and small businesses on repeat. So I'm gonna be leaving now, but be sure to like and subscribe our channel and watch me talk more. Anyway, that's all for me today. Bye!